Final Fantasy 15. Some gamers love it, some gamers hate it. That's been pretty much the case for nearly every entry in this long-running franchise. Now, when someone comes up to me and tells me that they don't like a particular Final Fantasy because it's not Final Fantasy enough, I begin to wonder which entry in Final Fantasy they're using as their framework for what a true Final Fantasy game should be. Now, are we talking about the OG Final Fantasy with blank slate protagonists, assigned job classes, and random enemy encounters and turn-based battles? Is that the one? No? Was your first entry Final Fantasy VII? Do you come to the table each time expecting the game to have a materia system and cool snowboarding minigames? Get real. Maybe you're one of those guys that prefer the roguelike nature of Chocobo's Dungeon with the giant yellow chicken protagonist. Yeah, that sounds about right. What you need to know is that the audience base of Final Fantasy is made up of so many different tastes and GameFAQs users that every GameFAQs poll has to include Cloud or Sephiroth in it. And you know what? Neither is right. Every time a new game releases, you get that polarizing chill. This is either the best game in the series, or this is either the worst game in the series. This is why I typically stray away from talking about mainline entries, because what's the use? I've got nothing to contribute to people's already preconceived notions about what a good Final Fantasy game is, and it just boils down to you like what you like, and you don't like what you don't like. Look, whatever your take is on Final Fantasy 15, you do have to admit that Hajime Tabata's grandiose vision for the project, spanning an elaborate series of interconnected media pieces spread across several video games and DLC and prequel animes and a kinda bad movie to weave an extended Final Fantasy 15 universe together, was nothing short of impressive. Whether or not Tabata was successful in transforming his fever dream into something enjoyable for all gamers of all different tastes is in the eye of the beholder. But personally, I thought 15 was a pretty good time. I guess I was too busy having fun driving around with the boys, going on camping trips sponsored by Coleman, hunting down large beasts for McDonald's managers, and fixing up my ride more so than the actual storyline in the game. In retrospect, I realized that just beyond the Japanese boy band surface, there lied a deeper redneck core to Final Fantasy 15 that I don't think many people acknowledge. What's even more surprising is that one day Square would then yank those understated elements out of Final Fantasy 15 and then recontextualize them into a standalone experience that exists as a sometimes functional VR game that's way more enjoyable than any fishing simulator that I've come across in my lifetime. I had never realized that I needed Cabela's Weeaboo fishing trip in my life until now. So what is Monster of the Deep Final Fantasy 15? Well, it's sort of a game that just came and went. It launched with little to no fanfare in November of 2017, but that's not without cause. You see, the game was originally an entirely different project that was announced in 2015 as being strictly a first-person shooter starring our pretty boy protagonist Prompto. In an E3 2015 teaser, the boys are shown trying to take down a behemoth while Prompto is firing at the beast from afar and teleporting to and from different vantage points. Initially, this VR experience was going to be included as a free downloadable with each copy of Final Fantasy 15 sometime after launch, but it didn't go down that way. The team even had a playable build of this version of FFVR at E3 of 2016, and footage of it was extremely hard to come by, so I want to give a major shout out to Bahamut Video Game Crazy YouTube channel, according to Google Translate, that's the name of this channel, for providing footage of this now lost media. You see, was that so hard to just shout somebody out when you take their footage? This game looks not too dissimilar to the battles found in the base game of Final Fantasy 15, and the gameplay is much simpler than I anticipated. Here you can see the controls are boiled down to the very basics, of players using a single move wand to fire and move at the same time. The gameplay seems fairly basic. You point the gun at the bad guy, you shoot the bad guy, and damage markers pop up. Looks like the stagger system was also implemented here, since at one point the behemoth is knocked over and the team lands harder hits on him. I'm guessing that the stagger was built up when Prompto hits these red target weak points that pop up on the behemoth, but I couldn't confirm that information because I haven't played it. The player seems to be truly enjoying it. You can also see how they get really lost in the immersion of Sid's cleavage. This is peak VR immersion. Man, why did they cancel this? Life can just be so unfair sometimes. The fortunate few that did get to try out this game at E3 of 2015 had a fairly negative to neutral response towards it. And from the looks of it, it all came down to how basic this experience was going to be. This was going to be a product of Hajime fucking Tabata. Hajime, third birthday, Tabata. You understand? He ain't a basic bitch. So the team met with each other and discussed whether or not this shooting gallery style of gameplay was entertaining enough on its own to be included with Final Fantasy 15, but they decided that it was just too boring and there was no natural way to include it into the main game without requiring the player to wear a headset the entire time. Just wouldn't work. No, they wanted to have Square's very first VR game be something special. So the team did what anyone would do in charge of developing another entry in a multi-million-dollar franchise. The only responsible thing to do at this time, they gone fishing.
So he is the character supervisor of Kingsglaive, but he creates his own rods and lures as well. A crazy guy.
So the team took a whole year to redevelop the project, and Monster of the Deep was what they came up with, which was announced via a trailer dropped on YouTube in June of 2017 to the dismay of scorned YouTube commenters out there. And holy shit, some of these comments were outstanding. Sean McKenzie. Why, Sony? Why? I used to defend this company, but Xbox is clearly stepping up and actually trying. While Sony is mostly milking consumers, Xbox is becoming last-gen Sony and Sony's becoming last-gen Xbox. Disappointing. I mean, who could blame these people for reacting that way? And ultimately, who could have seen this move coming? It was quite a pivot made by Square Enix to go from first-person shooter to first-person fisher and then drop a trailer on us all. Trust me when I say the announcement trailer is not representative of the final game whatsoever, and there's so much more than what was presented. Why the fuck did they think announcing just a fishing game when it's not just a fishing game was a good idea? I don't know. So this game has the honor of being the first VR experience ever developed by Square Enix, and now it's the most obscure Final Fantasy game by nature of being a digital-only exclusive to the PlayStation 4's PSVR, and at the time of this video, it has not been included in any physical compilations of 15. Despite it releasing just months before the Royal Edition, it was released on the PlayStation Store as a standalone game for the MSRP of $29.99 US. But if you're like me, you waited a couple of years for the game to go on sale on PlayStation Network and got it for $15. And that's why we're here. Let's get into it. From the title screen, you're dunked into the middle of the ocean where a horrific shark monster swims up to your face. Welcome to the game. Monster of the Deep just established its strangely unsettling atmosphere, and I am not exaggerating when I say there's many more jump scares to come, and this game has put me on edge on more than one occasion. It's one of the most unsettling games on the VR, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. Alright, first screen of the game. What the hell am I looking at? Oh my god. Scary fish weren't enough? The tutorial segment leaves a really weird first impression of Monster of the Deep. But now, this is where you gotta make your first choice. You're either gonna endure the sometimes inaccurate motion tracking and glitchy casting, or you walk away disappointed just before the shit gets good. And it's about to get so good. Let me help you out. First, you'll need to make a couple of adjustments right out of the gate to smooth out your game experience. Make sure you hold down the Options button with your head facing the PSK camera to reposition your character to the most suitable position. You're gonna have to do this at least once each time you load a new map, or else you're gonna end up like Mr. Fantastic. I mean, it's entirely up to you how you want to play, man. Stretchy arms seems kinda cool. You're also gonna need to decide what control style fits your level of comfort. There are two ways to play here. You have the option of playing with either a pair of PlayStation Move wands or the PlayStation 4 controller by itself. The wands do provide more accuracy in the control over the left and right arms, but they make menu navigation a pain because you have to hold down the back trigger and then swipe the wand left or right to scroll through basic items. Way clunkier than just using a D-pad. The casting distance and arc of your cast will all depend on what kind of rod and reel you have equipped in conjunction with your casting ability. The controls do take a little getting used to, but thankfully the developers built in some target practice into the loading screens, so it won't take long for you to get the hang of it. You start out with a character creator that has a decent amount of depth to it for a throwaway fishing game, and if you're not happy with your initial selections, you can always change it later, and you also have the option of purchasing new clothes for your character as you progress through the game. Believe it or not, there's a semi-entertaining story to be found within Monster of the Deep. You take control of a blank slate redneck protagonist, takes his little station wagon out to a dank foreboding crater to go on a little fishing trip with the hopes of becoming the bass boss or some shit like that. He's out in his little boat fishing along until the aforementioned Monster of the Deep pops out and almost kills him. Coincidentally, Sid just happens to be taking her 18-wheeler out for a stroll near that particular crater, and instead of taking you out to a doctor, she plops your body on a couch in this rundown cabin in the woods, like a good Samaritan do. You wake up to the sound of the radio and learn that all your favorite fishing holes are infested with daemons. And I guess you were part of the Hunters Guild that was sent out to rid the waters of all these deadly creatures and solve this problem once and for all. Remember that big monster you encountered? Well, that was the big boss of all the daemons, goddammit. But you're in no shape to take him on yet, so in the meantime, you gotta get your grind on. This here is your virtual cabin, where there's a surprising amount of things to do and interact with. Occasionally, you'll get mail delivered to you that expands on the story of what's going on in the world outside of your isolated fishing quest. Or sometimes guests might show up to hang out or show off their tan lines.
Oh, you fixin' to head out?
In the cabin, you can purchase new tackle, rods, line, and outfits for your character. And when you're ready, you can hop in your car and choose a quest to go on. The game is broken up into 4 main styles of quests. You have your hunts that have you drive out to fishing holes at night to hunt for money and to increase your hunter rank. Then there's a free mode where you can pick a map to fish at your own leisure. Then there's story mode where one of 15's protagonists will make a little cameo.
Yeah, nice try. You can't fool me. I know a fishing rod when I see one.
It gets bigger when I pull on it.
Finally, there's a tournament mode where you're given a set amount of time to catch as many fish as you can to then get the highest score, which will then be taken and compared against other online players of the day and enter you into a prize payout at the end. This is a fantastic way to earn gil, and trust me, you'll need as much money as you can get. The general flow of the game goes like this. You'll pick out a hunt, then drive to the area and equip the lure that your target prefers. Then you use your radar to seek out the target fish, usually represented by pink. You walk around the maps by zapping along these blue grids on the ground that act as a reference point for where you can travel. On the map, there will be designated fishing spots where you can then transition into fishing mode. In fishing mode, you use your radar to find the fish nest as represented by this yellow circle. circle, then you cast your lure into the circle, which will trigger the target fish to attack you if you're lucky, but sometimes you'll get a boot. Such is life. The fishing is a bit different than what you might be used to from Final Fantasy 15. Here, you're not given the fish's HP for you to see how close you are to landing them. Also, there's no indication of how much durability remains on your line. It either snaps or it doesn't. A lot of the game's mechanics seem to be left half-baked or implied. For example, each rod, reel, and line all have a set amount of attack and defense, which you can then mix and match to build a strong loadout. In 15, you could gauge how effective your loadout was by how much HP damage it would take off the fish. Now, I don't know if this was a design decision to keep the player's focus on reeling in the fish in front of them, or just a big oversight, but I wish they would have included a health bar, at least as an option. You want my advice? It's always best to get something with high defense and reel with the flow of the fish. The faster the better. And carry a bunch of lures in case they snap your line so you don't have to trek back to the store. So once you land a fish, you have the option of snapping your arm in a pose for a hilarious photo, which will then be prominently featured somewhere in your cabin, or you can just take the fish and drop it in the basket to collect your bounty. The game will keep track of the variety and weight of each fish, and it will reward you with experience depending on the quality of your fish. Those experience points go towards increasing your character level, which will then unlock bonus lures, skill, or tickets that you can use in the tournament. Now, each map has a day version and a night version, which will determine what sort of fish will come out, as well as monsters. Remember when I said this game was unsettling? I wasn't kidding. Full disclosure, none of the monsters can harm you, with the exception of the bosses, but they just kind of hang out and act really fucking creepy, and I don't like it. It doesn't help that they play this ominous graveyard music while they're doing it. Look, man, I'm just trying to relax and catch some fish here. I didn't know I needed to bring a change of pants. If it's one thing I'll give Monster of the Deep credit for, it truly does live up to its name. The game provides you with a better understanding of the sheer scale of some of the monsters found within the Final Fantasy universe, and it gives you a closer look at the detail that goes into their creation. For example, upon closer inspection, I found this spider to have tits. As a cute little bonus objective, when you're walking around on the maps, you'll occasionally find some trash on the ground that you can pick up and then decorate your cabin with said trash. Now, I don't know if there's some sort of underlying environmentalism subtext going on here, but just look at all this shit I found. Welcome to my neat nest. Would you like a cup noodle? Alright, by now you've probably drawn some conclusions about Monster of the Deep, thinking that it's some shallow, barely passable fishing and can collecting simulator like many ones you've played before. But no, it's time to talk about the main attraction. Let's talk about them boss battles. In the story quests, you're tasked with clearing out the lake boss, and it's not as simple as it sounds. First, you gotta lure them out by catching a bunch of smaller fish in the area, which then builds up their pissed off bar, and once that's maxed out, then the boss will appear, which prompts you to trade in your fishing rod for a crossbow with exploding bolts. What's the matter? Did you think the developers were gonna throw away an already developed shooting mechanics? I don't think so. The boss battles in Monster of the Deep go off the rails and provide you with some of the most tense and terrifying boss battles in the entire Final Fantasy franchise. How did they do it? These fish give no fucks. They will launch fireballs at your face, spit out toxic bubbles that litter the map, or they'll even go as far as to clone themselves into multiple fish, and you gotta figure out who's the real deal. In traditional video game boss form, each one has 3 phases to their form, with each subsequent phase being faster faster and stronger than the one before. The catch is, this time around, the players can be killed. So if you die, it'll send you packing back to the title screen. From the looks of things, the shooting mechanics were toned down majorly from the E3 demo. Instead of zipping around to different vantage points, your character is planted in one spot and expected to defend themselves against the enemy onslaught. I guess there's nothing too complex going on beyond the point and shoot mechanics. Hell, you don't even have to worry about reloading, it does that for you. And the experience is a little on the stupid side, but fun. Stupid but fun. Don't let the look of these fights deceive you here. They're extremely frantic and you will be on your toes. After you've depleted their third HP bar, the game then switches back to fishing mode, and then you have a short window of time to cast your rod into their circle to hook them and reel them in. And no, it's not as easy as it sounds, because you have to go from adrenaline pumping, exploding arrow showdown to calm, focused Zen casting. And if you don't hurry up, the fish will then recover their health and the boss fight will be back on. As a reward for catching the monster, you get to take your rod and fling them up into the air, where they then explode into purple fireworks. God damn, where has this game been all my life? Alright, gripe time. Now as you progress through the story mode, you're only given one additional crossbow, which gives you the ability to unload a more powerful charge shot. That's my only major complaint with Monster of the Deep. There's a severe lack of weapon customization, and there was a lot more potential to incorporate things like magic, or laying down fish traps, or perhaps the ability to move around and shoot would have been welcome. Now before I get into the last boss, I want to say that Monster of the Deep is one of those games that is enjoyable in a sum of all experiences sense. It's a lot of little things that make a great game, but it's not particularly strong in any one area. I'm looking at this whole thing as it could have been a garden variety shooting gallery game, something that you would find a dime a dozen on the platform, but they took a step back into creating something more. This was Square's first shot at VR, and I consider it a successful one. It's an experience I'll always remember because it was my first step into the world of Final Fantasy in an immersive sense. It gave me something that I never knew I wanted. Now admittedly, this game is as half-baked as it gets, and a lot of the fun is owed to the player's own familiarity with the Final Fantasy franchise. But I maintain there are enough original contributions and downright terrifying moments here to make the purchase worthwhile at the price point of $15, and don't you dare pay $1 more. Reviewing a VR game tends to be like explaining to someone about a magic show that you went to go see. Now you can try your best to describe how fascinating the experience was, you can talk about how charismatic the magician was at the show, and tell them how excited you felt when he pulled a rabbit out of the hat, but the recipient of the story isn't likely to believe the magic until they've seen it for themselves. It's a you just kinda have to take my word for it situation. Well, my friends, let's talk about this magic show's grand finale. After you've cleared all the bosses, you hop back in your little station wagon and drive back to the dark foreboding crater for the final showdown. The absolute scale of this fight is comparable to how I felt when I summoned Ramu from 15 for the first time. It's outstanding. It's the centerpiece to the whole game. First phase, shoot the eyes and take out all the fireballs the big fish is throwing at you. Seems simple enough. Phase 2, the monster shrinks down, throws even more fire your way, and he gives you only a split second to attack him. Alright, things are heating up. Final form. He turns into a humongous fucking meteor that will destroy the planet if he touches down. What are you gonna do about it? My first time around, I just wasn't prepared to deal with this. I died to the third phase because I tried to land nothing but charge shots when the true answer was rapid fire. Being a Final Fantasy player throughout the years, I should have known to take meteors seriously. Anyways, did the fight over again, shot him a bunch of times, and I won the game. Epilogue. The aftermath of the fight causes your little boat to capsize, but you're rescued by your husband, Noctis, by stretching out your gross arm to grab his hand. Now it's gay old camping time with the boys. Celebrating a job well done. Roll the credits. When I was reflecting on my time with Monster of the Deep and writing the script, I began to draw a parallel with another game that I've reviewed. There's something about taking high-powered firearms to slay oversized nautical beasts and then hooking them before they swam away that rang an all too familiar bell. It's like I've been down this road before. No, there's no way. I'm crazy. The very thought is crazy. I mean, who could ever connect an obscure Final Fantasy spin-off to being a spiritual sequel to an even more obscure Simple Series game? It's just impossible. The thought experiment is not even worth... Oh my god. It was hiding in plain sight the entire time.